tonight we're just going to start off and have a little bit of conversation with Deane. So Deane, why don't we come up and have a chat? So Deane, Calgary Co-op, you're the CEO with many years experience. You're speaking tomorrow on consumer trends. So why don't you tell us a little bit of history about yourself?
Okay, well, wow, that's pretty loud. I started off in the, actually in the meat business for Canada Packers, Maple Leaf Foods back in the 70s. So kind of started off there and then worked in different areas there, product development, processed meats, marketing. Then from there I went to Livestock companies and I was there for about 24 years. Basically looking after the fresh side of the business. You know, again, started in the meat business at Livestock companies, procurement, product development, President's Choice, running discount banners, conventional banners, and then had the great opportunity to come out west to you know, help the folks at Calgary Co-op be successful. So that's where I've been now for the last 4 years. So Deane, you have a tremendous amount of experience in the meat industry, which I think is you know, dear to our hearts. So I would say the more you work in it, you feel like the less you know, and it's a vastly changing business every year. So what worked 20 years ago doesn't necessarily work today, for sure.
So this is a co-op. How's it different versus a publicly traded company? It's very different.
Well, I think, you know, co-ops are very different than publicly traded companies. You know, as most in the room probably know, it's owned by our members. We've got 440,000 members who own a piece of Calgary Co-op. And, you know, that's great because, you know, they're members. We're accountable to our members. And as you know, like Calgary Co-op is part of Federated Co-op. So all the co-ops in Western Canada in the food, you know, petroleum business, you know, they're basically our wholesaler. So I think there's a real accountability to members very locally, whereas, you know, public companies, they're very driven by, you know, quarterly results. They're very driven by bottom line, and, you know, they're very aggressive in, you know, sometimes short-term solutions to problems because they, you know, they don't have a longer-term view. A co-op has a long-term view because we want to do the right thing for our members long-term. So very different accountabilities.
So, you know, the co-op has evolved a lot over the years. You know, if you go back many years, it started off as a producer, you know,
yeah,
movement.
And, you know, co-ops, you know, even our co-op, I mean, we used to sell everything. For those of you who remember, I mean, we had clothing in the stores and we had hardware in the stores. We had bulk flour, you know, and a lot of those businesses, you know, we couldn't compete in. So, you know, as different competitors came in, you know, we couldn't compete. So, you know, we had to modify our business and really focus on what we could win at. And obviously petroleum is a big business for us, which we do extremely well at because obviously the Cooperatives of Western Canada own a refinery in Regina. You know, our food business, you know, didn't do so well up in Edmonton, which was another co-op at the time. But the one in Calgary, we continue to flourish. And, you know, we have a wines and spirits business. I don't know if you've seen that in any of your travels, but the wines and spirits is a growing business. So really kind of reacting to the market as we can.
Well, I actually heard a comment on the wines and spirits while you mentioned it from one of my employees. Said you had the best ones in Calgary. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but
what's her number? What's her number?
So the philosophy or the culture within co-op, it's a very different philosophy than certainly a publicly traded company. Could you elaborate a little bit on?
Well, you know, our philosophy, I mean, the biggest difference is that we're for our members, but we're also very local. So you'll hear a lot about that tomorrow, but it's really trying to respond to, you know, what Calgarians want. We're Calgary Co-op, so really trying to read those trends and understanding that. So in our philosophy is, you know, we're not out to make a huge profit to drive shareholder value because all of our profit goes back to our members. So, and it goes back to the community. So at the end of the year, after funding our capital projects, it all goes back to our members. So, you know, we're driven to be profitable only so that we can reinvest in our business and make it successful in the future.
Yeah. So it's good history. We've learned a lot about co-op, but you know, let's talk about a little bit of the competition. You know, we've had some retail meat case studies, and you know, the co-op annual report, you know, showed that you know, Calgarians rank co-op as having one of the best, if not the best, meat case in Calgary. Mm-hmm. You know, and you've got some tough competition there. So, you know, how do you see the competition and how do you position?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You know, lots has changed with the competition the last week, as you all know. But I think what we have to do as a co-op, we have to try to figure out how we can be different. And Calgary Co-op has had a great reputation for meat for many years, red meat, beef basically. And it's kind of interesting, coming from the East, where all this research was done, or even in the US, you find chicken as the key driver of the meat departments. When I moved out west here, I couldn't believe how great the beef was out here. And it's, so, I think it's been a heritage brand for Calgary Co-op, and I think, as we find out that consumers really like it, we keep pouring more and more into it to make it better and better. And one of the big differences is service. There's not too many places now where you can get service meat, people to help you. So I think that's one of our key differentiators.
Sure, it can get a competitive advantage, shall we say. So what is your brand story? Every brand has a story.
I'm going to do the brand story tomorrow.
Okay, so we don't want to go too far down there.
It's going to end my little chat tomorrow about it. We're really proud of our brand story, and hopefully it resonates with lots of people in the room, those of you who have been out in the Alberta market or the Calgary market for a long time.
So, as you said, there's a lot of change happening in the retailing side. Now we have the Sobeys Safeway merging. What do you think will change, or how do you think it will change, co-ops retailing or buying strategies, shall we say?
Well, there's no question with that merger, in the retail market, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but when Walmart came out to Western Canada, they started off with some food, but then in the last couple of years they've invested huge into their fresh food business. So they've put $10 million into every store in Western Canada, basically. And then what happens when they do that? How does that affect Calgary Co-op? Well, then Superstore, they put $10 million in every store and put all their fresh and their produce right up front. And then what happens is then Target comes to town. Target puts in food stores. How does that affect Calgary Co-op? Well, Walmart and Superstore decide to go on a pricing battle with them. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like, the old British Navy and these big giant gun battles, fighting at each other, and with a little, little minnow in the middle, with blasting over it. So, and then obviously with the Safeway Sobeys merger, it makes another Goliath. And what will happen there, obviously, is the Safeway stores really haven't had a big investment in since they put their lifestyle in. So they'll probably, expectation would be stores usually get renovated every 8 to 10 years. So they'll probably put money into those stores to reposition it. So really all of our competition is investing huge money in their stores. And our challenge will be to, how do we weave around them? So we're kind of like the little fast hockey player amongst the giants, and we have to just be able to skate around them and be successful to our members.
Oh,
I don't know if is that the answer?
No, I think it's a great answer, because I think because it leads right into the next part of the question is, as a retailer, what are some of the biggest challenges facing retailers? I mean, they all, we talk, it's a very competitive environment.
Well, I would say, the biggest trend everybody knows about is the growth of the discount segment. So, everyone's trying to find the bottom on price, and it's very difficult for anybody that's a conventional or us as a co-op to try to figure out, what is really added value? What are people willing to pay a little bit more for? And I think no matter all of the businesses you're in, I'm sure you have the same question to yourself. So the key on that is really listening to customers, doing really good research, and trying to figure that out. Really an interesting example in the beef business. You remember way back all the research said people wanted leaner beef. I could be off on this if there's any true beef guys here, producers, but all those Charolais came in, the beef got really lean, and then what happens and think way back, what was the percent kill of AAA back in the 70s or 80s? It was a very small percentage. Now when you look at AAA, it's a huge percentage of the beef business. Now the research doesn't support AAA. People want leaner, but at the end of the day, people want great taste. So I think that's where you got to be really careful, trying to read your research to say, are they really saying what is their pocketbook following what they say, or is there some other driver there? So I think that's a real interesting one.
I think it leads right into where I'd like to leave us tonight is, as the industry, the meat and livestock industry, they have challenges as well. And how do they partner with co-op? How do they work with co-op, to make sure that they're relevant, and it would probably be the biggest challenge that they have to make sure that they do what's right.
Well, maybe just another thought, just while I was thinking about the AAA, New Zealand lamb, I think, is a really great example of an industry that really got their manure together. They way back, they identified an opportunity. You know, it sounds, you know, all the resources. I don't know if any of you have seen these New Zealand lamb plants. You know, they look like Nassau. I mean, they're ultra clean, very cold, you know, no bacteria, and you know, they can ship that lamb all over the world by boat and, you know, still achieve. And they've got, you know, consistent product, great branding. You know, they're now, you get a little wee country like that supplying lamb to the world. So I always thought, you know, that was always one of my favorite examples of somebody that really was able to figure out how to get a product. That's more of a global strategy, maybe a Canadian, Alberta strategy. But I think from a co-op perspective, obviously, you know, we want to do things, and I'll talk a lot about it tomorrow, but, you know, how we can, you know, work with producers, suppliers, and we'll talk about our resolution tomorrow. But maybe there's ways that we can differentiate in some products that, you know, can help us be different than our competition. But the other thing I would tell you too is, you know, an interesting story is, you know, where do you get ideas from? You know, you could use us. This is my pitch. You know, use us as your test ground. So, good example in Calgary, Simple Simon soups and pies. I don't know if you know them or not, but you know, we went around to the farmers market, saw these guys lineups. So we went to the guys at Simple Simon and said, "We'd love you to put soups into our stores and pies." And now guess what? You know, now we're selling, you know, 300% more in, you know, Simple Simon soups and pies. So what's the learning from that? Now guess what? Now the big guys are phoning up trying to find out what this little secret is, why they're not, you know, what this advantage is that co-op has. So sometimes, you know, you can go and test a little thing with a co-op, this is my plug here, and maybe that will become a trend that other people will notice, because it's pretty hard to test things now with, you know, Walmart, Loblaw, giant Sobeys. Because, you know, for them, I mean, it's going to be one thing for 1,500 stores, and it's very hard to kind of learn how to differentiate.
So what does the future hold for co-op? You know, the future is a pretty dynamic piece of work there.
Well, once we take over Loblaw companies, we plan to. I really, you know, there's lots of great examples of, like we really want to differentiate and be the best. And, you know, one of the things we do is, you know, we travel around trying to find best in class, and we go and meet with Wegmans in the US, or we go and meet with Longo's in Ontario, and or we go and meet with, you know, Fortino's. These are all, Wegmans is a big company, but they do some things very well. So you go with those guys, we try to find out who does the absolute best. We don't try to copy them, we try to find out why it's working for them, take those ideas. I think as a retailer, you have to be a very good thief to be able to find out what you can learn from other people and bring back and fit into your market. So you'll see in our stores, we've got this fresh to go now, which we plan to have the best fresh food at the best price, you know, meals to go in our stores. And we, you know, how did we do that? Well, we hired the executive chef from Moxie's who developed the new recipe program for Moxie's across Canada. I don't know if you know the success of Moxie's, but you know, they were kind of mid, and they were able to really change their branding and their positioning. So now we've hired him, best in class guy, best in class from some of our, you know, other retailers across North America to try to help Calgary Co-op. And that's an example of a strategy that can't be copied by anybody else. You know, we know Walmart's not going to do that, Superstore is not going to do that. So it's going to be a differentiator for us. It's impossible for others to copy.
Well, great. So I'm going to leave you with one last question. And, you know, I always get this one with Kim McConnell, wherever he's sitting. He always says, you know, he asks every interview, you know, what keeps you up at night, you know?
Geez, there's a lot of them. I have to narrow it down to one. You know, I think it's what keeps all of us up at night. I mean, you know, things happen that you don't know about, you know, whether the U.S. changes their labeling requirements on beef. I mean, that's a killer for many of the people in this room probably, or, you know, Sobeys all of a sudden to buy Safeway, or, you know, there's kind of these unexpected things. But I think, obviously the big thing is, you know, can you generate the sales you need? Can you find that customer niche that's going to, in our business, what will they pay a little bit more for to, you know, come and shop at Co-op? Because we can't be the lowest price, so we need to find value that really matters to consumers. And if we can't find that value, then we'll be swept away.
Well, Deane, that's, you know, we're gonna wrap it up there tonight. It kind of sets the stage for tomorrow with your presentation. I know you're going to go into some of the more, shall we say, controversial things that I think certainly for the pork industry and certainly the beef industry, and they look forward to it.
Okay.
And Deane said that he did want to have the hard questions. He's going to have a bit of a time there to answer some questions from his presentation, and he challenges the audience to bring forward the questions, and he'll give you an honest opinion from a retailer. So take advantage of it. Deane, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.